Welcome today to our virtual boardroom, Work-Life Balance, What is it and how do you know when you've got there? That is being facilitated by HR Recruit and Marion Hewitt. My name's Jo Thompson and I'm a consultant for HR Recruit. I'm joined today by Marion, who will introduce herself shortly. Marion is going to consider some of the assumptions and challenges around working towards a better balance and then identify actions we can take to gain a better balance in our world. If you've got any questions or comments during the session, then please put them into the chat box and we will cover them as we go along. Otherwise, I'm now going to hand you over to Marion, who will introduce herself and start the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. We were just debating or talking about the fact that when it's a well-being topic, the challenge people experience in terms of actually prioritising it when it's about themselves. So thank you for prioritising it for you, and I hope the next 3/4 of an hour will be useful. My name is Marion, as Jo said. My background is a lot of years in HR, different sectors, different types of roles. Developed a particular interest in wider well-being and mental health, and then also positive psychology, so how we move from not just protecting and supporting people and ourselves with poor mental health, but actually how we can draw on research to move to places of thriving and flourishing. And I work with organisations in relation to that. So in this session, we are going to be thinking about work-life balance. And I haven't suddenly got loads of perfect answers that will make it all fit in place for you. But some of what I want us to do is to just think a bit more about what we actually mean by work-life balance, what it means collectively, what it means individually, and then think about where there might be areas that we could do a bit of recalibration, some changes we can make, and then some very specific actions that you might take to gain a better balance between the different areas of your life. So as I'm going through, I would really encourage you to think about the different things that are happening in your world, and to think about anything that you might stop doing because it's having a negative impact on your overall balance. What things that you might start doing that supports your work-life balance. And this isn't about big changes, major lifestyle choices. This is about the fine-tuning, the things that we could perhaps take greater ownership for. And then what are we going to make sure that we do continue doing? So just make notes to help you as reminders. So let's actually start by thinking about, what is it and how do we know when we've got there? It's kind of portrayed as this nirvana where everything fits neatly together and life is good. Perhaps it's this Zen-like state where we've got to the end of our to-do list and there's nothing left to do, so we're all feeling in control. But it really isn't that simple. And actually, arguably, it's only something we've been able to think about. We've had the luxury of thinking about in more recent times. As previously people might have been just working just to survive, or actually they didn't work. There wasn't the same need to be getting the different elements of our world fitting together. So it's really only something that's become more of an issue, of course we have more demands on our time. And actually also perhaps more expectations about wanting time to do the things just because we like, the leisure activities. We're not just working to survive. We have wider expectations. And then there's also the importance and why we're perhaps thinking about it more as we've recognised where there's an impact on our overall health and well-being when we are overworking, when we haven't got that balance right. So I'm not sort of thinking about any particular academic definitions. I think it's what it means to you. But to me, I guess I would describe work-life balance as a place when I'm perhaps feeling happy and fulfilled in the different areas of my world. And it isn't where one area isn't dominating my thinking and draining my resources. It's about the mental separation as much as the physical separation. Can you leave work, home behind you when you move into another area? And actually, I find that's often one of the biggest challenges. Things are hanging over you in a different area of life. So I might physically have been at home, but actually I'm still thinking about something work-wise. So how we can think about those elements. So research shows that when people have got a good work-life balance, they're more engaged at work and perform better and have a higher life and overall family satisfaction, basically are happier. But let's think about some of the common assumptions when people say the phrase. You know, we bandy the phrase around quite a lot. And there's often that implicit thinking that actually work is bad and life is good. But there's many different aspects. It's not just a case of life and work. There's family, social life, exercise, hobbies, domestic tasks. There's lots of different elements of our lives. And some of them will be more important to us than others. And if we're enjoying our work, we won't necessarily want less work. So the idea that, you know, work is bad, life is good, isn't necessarily true. They're interconnected. They'll be part of our purpose. We'll have connection with others. And if, you know, we love the work that we're doing, perhaps we're in a creative role, then actually we might be putting much more time and resource into it than somebody else might into their work. So what actually that balance looks like is always going to be different. The idea that we always want more life and actually less work. Some aspects of my life outside work I'd quite like more of, others I'd happily have less, all the other to-do jobs that need doing. But actually it's about how we get that balance in terms of right for my overall well-being. It's a simplistic response, simplistic perspective just to think about life and work. And do we actually really want to separate them? It's unrealistic, really. There will be some spillover. And that spillover can be positive or it can be negative. You know, if I have a really good day at work, I'll come home and that will leave me energized for the things at outside work. But vice versa, if things are not going well at work, I'll come home and I'll feel depleted, and it will be impacting other areas of my world. So it's unrealistic. You know, particularly the current time of flexible working, hybrid working, actually how we do that balance and the separation becomes a lot more complicated. And it's also not fixed. It will be at different places at different times in life, different career stages. Or you might have something big going on in one area of your world. So that is going to take more resources at that time. So the balance is going to be different. You might have a big project at work, so you're investing more time for that period of time. Or another time you might have something big going on with a member of your family, so that you want the balance in a different place. So I think we don't want to think of it as fixed, something that is flexible. And the key element is, you know, whether it feels right for us. What is happening when the balance isn't right for you? And I'd be interested, you know, if I'm guessing you're here because there's an element of perhaps the balance isn't quite where you would like it to be. So perhaps put in the chat, what are the things that tell you if your balance isn't right? Any thoughts? Anything in the chat that you think of if your work and your life or all the areas of your life are not in the right balance? Is the chat working? Yeah. Poor sleep. Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I think it's difficult to feel just in control. If the balance isn't right, we just feel generally misaligned. We've got parts that are overwhelming, other parts we're not able to do the things we want to do, be the person we want to do, because one area of our world is depleting our resources now. You know, if the balance isn't right, we might be working, get a bit touchy, yeah, working long hours, we might be losing contact with friends. Or if somebody outside work needs a lot of support, we might find we're missing deadlines at work. We might be worrying about one area when we're actually in the other. We might lose perspective. We might experience wider symptoms associated with stress and anxiety. Yeah, just general lower energy, thank you. A sense of overwhelm, I think that's a key one. Or we almost get stuck in that thought paralysis. We just have that overwhelm of so many things to do, things just not fitting together right, that actually it becomes difficult to progress in any area. So think about yourself. And where are you now? If totally subjective measure. If you were to give yourself a score out of 10, where would you say you are now? If 10 is everything is neatly fitting together and it all feels under control, 1 is I need to do quite a lot of work, it's totally out of kilter at the moment. Just catch the number that you think you are. You don't, no requirement to share it, you can if you want, but just take stock. What's currently working well for you, what's perhaps causing you anxiety or stress or making you anxious. Do you feel the balance is in your control? Because that's a key element. Do we feel we have some control over where that balance is? Or are there ways I might take more control? So for some people, that balance is about having a regular routine, knowing clearly how things fit together and what to do when. For other people, actually having that flexibility gives a better balance. I know personally, actually, that flexibility over the years has made a huge difference to being able to maintain that balance, or I don't know whether it's balance or juggling, but actually having the option to move things around as necessary. So also, think about all the categories that come under that life umbrella term, because it's also about getting the balance right within those, not just thinking about it as those 2 elements. If the balance isn't right now, we probably would prefer it to feel better. We know the outcomes. If things are fitting together well in our lives, our psychological well-being is affected, we're feeling better, more resourceful. Ultimately, we're performing better and feeling happier. And when that's not working, we're not deliberately putting barriers up. We're not deliberately sabotaging ourselves getting to that place. There will be clear barriers to that. And changing the habits we have can be really hard. The normal might be familiar, even if it's not where we want to be. So we stay in that place because it's what we're used to. And most of what we do is habit. We need it to be habit. We can't consciously make every choice, every decision, every moment of every day. And as probably shared with other sessions, we have around 64,000 thoughts a day. 95% of them are the same as yesterday. Most of what we do is habitual. So we have to catch what we're actually doing, notice what we're doing that isn't helpful to be able to make those changes. But certainly work out what's stopping me. Is it those pressures about belief of having to put others first all the time? Is it a belief that we shouldn't be putting a priority on something that's important to us? So actually work out what's getting in the way. And time, I don't accept time as one of those issues, because it's not just about the things that you might want to do, it's as much about the habits we change and the things that we stop. So time, at one level, I don't want to be too dismissive of it, but at one level we have greater control over it that's not time related. There will always be some barriers that are time related. So when I've asked that question, just check in with the thoughts that were going through your head when I was asking it. What was your inner voice telling you? Have you got beliefs linked to the way you are managing things that are perhaps unhelpful and detrimental? And could you be kinder to yourself? We will go back to that a little bit later, but just reflect on that. Just notice the narrative that was going through your head when I was asking you about those barriers, whether you were putting obstacles in the way, whether they were words I can't or I shouldn't or I must were getting in the way. So how do I improve the balance for me? I think it's a mix of things. It's about the practical steps and actions you can take. So what specifically can I do? How will I ensure it happens? When? Make it a clear action. not an intention. If you have something written down saying, I'm going to try to, it won't happen. Be very clear as to what you're going to do when, and make it measurable. Be able to tick it off a list. So note, check in with your thoughts and feelings, the beliefs. How can you challenge your thoughts? How can I catch my thoughts to challenge them? How can I reframe my thoughts to make them more positive action? And generally, actually, these are the areas that are harder to change. A lot of these things are going to be very hardwired into us, very deeply held beliefs. So we will have to work at making some of these changes. And then the other bit is about that area of taking ownership for change. Do we have greater ownership in areas that we might be taking? For example, saying we never have time to take a lunch break. Well, actually, who's saying that? Yes, we'll never get to the end of our to-do list. Is it actually going to make a huge difference if we take a half-hour break? Put it in our diary, make it happen. What is currently depleting my resources? Notice the things actually that are causing you issues, and how can you take some ownership for doing some things differently? How might you prioritize, reprioritize things? Because we never have enough time. Everything we choose to do is a choice not to do something else in that moment. So how are we going to make that time spent on the things that actually are the important things? And am I putting different expectations on myself than on others? I'm putting pressure on, expecting myself to be able to do all those things, and almost accepting that, rather than taking some wider ownership that I might be able to do some things better. And remember, all of this is about getting that better overall outcome. If we get this balance right, ultimately we'll be able to do all the things we want to do better, because we'll feel better, we'll be more resourced, we'll feel happier, more fulfilled. So actually there's lots of benefits in actually working to get this balance right. So I'm going to go through a few different areas, really just to give you an opportunity to think about how you approach things, to think about ways that you might make changes, because a lot of what we're doing is just habit, and where we might make changes. So what's our approach to managing time? As I said, we never have time. It's never something that we can actually tangibly choose and do, but it's about, in each moment in time, what is my choice to be able to use in this moment? There'll never suddenly be this magic space of time that we're going to be able to do all these things that we think we're going to do when I've got time. It's about, how am I going to use this moment in the best way? And what's the best choice to make with this moment in time that's available? So we will probably never get to the end of our to-do list. Does anybody ever get to the end of a to-do list? I might put a list of 3 things and manage that in a day, but my overall to-do list is never going to finish. And actually, overall, I'm okay with that. I like the fact there's always things I want to get on with. I like the fact there's always stuff that I would like to do, but it's when I'm constantly putting pressure on myself that I'm just not getting through it quickly enough that it becomes counterproductive. So how am I looking at my list, or looking at the things that I want to do? And accepting, there were peaks and troughs in different areas of my life. So how am I allowing for that? How am I allowing some flexibility, being kind to myself in recognizing that? If I've got something going on in one area that is taking a lot of my resources, whether that's physical or mental, actually be kind to myself. I can acknowledge that, but know the balance can change. So are there techniques I could use to be more effective with the time I have got? So how do I prioritize my tasks? What works for me? And again, some of this is about just testing strategies. Some people like using the urgent importance matrix and making sure they're working in the right areas. Some people say get at the tasks over with that you don't like doing first, just make them first on your list, get them out of the way. Other times, other approaches are start with something that actually you enjoy doing, that gets you energized, so you're more resourced to then get other things off the list. So work out what is the best way for you to get to the tasks that actually are the important ones. Look at the things that are getting in your diary. Only set up or attend meetings that actually have a clear purpose. Don't get wrapped up in things that are eating away at your time available for all these things, but actually are not achieving things. Rather than having a ridiculously long list of things, identify 3 clear points when at work to achieve in a day. And at the same time, if it's outside work, you've got a list of things. Just be realistic and just set a couple of things as targets that you can actually achieve. And at the end of the day, reflect on what you've achieved as well, rather than still what needs to be done. Recognize that we do make progress. It might sometimes not feel like it, but we will have done things. And perhaps if there's other bigger projects or bigger things that you want to get on with, perhaps look at starting the day with a focused 30 minutes on a project so you can start making progress on that. Look at emails, just set times of the day so it's not constantly distracting your focus. Turn off notifications, turn off all notifications. All they do is interfere with what we're trying to do, and then it takes time to refocus. Set yourself start and finish times at work. Arrange something to make yourself stick to them. Look at other techniques as well that might work in terms of managing time. The Pomodoro technique, some of you may have heard of, and research showed that 25 minutes is actually the optimum length of time for focus. So focus on something for 25 minutes, have a 5-minute break, then another 25 minutes, and then have a longer break after 3 or 4 rounds of that. To try it, a more proactive approach to managing time. And then boundaries. This is always an interesting one in terms of where we can take greater ownership and challenge yourself in a supportive way as to where you might set clearer boundaries around use of technology. We'll talk about that a bit more later, about sort of membership of WhatsApp groups, how they can interfere with things, particularly work WhatsApp groups end up creating a 24/7 availability culture, which sometimes can be useful, but I would say more often than not it's not. Are you always making yourself available? We want to support others. We want to help others. So are we constantly available rather than actually being realistic about what we're able to do? How do we feel about saying no? I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment, but clearly putting that boundary in place rather than being I don't like the term people pleaser, but always feeling that we've got to be available and say yes. And then boundaries in that flexible working, hybrid working, working from home. How do you separate out those different areas of your world so you can actually put work away at the end of a working day? You can move into other areas. So look at where you might put clearer boundaries. And then that saying no bit, it's a very simple word, but actually it's one that we can often find very hard to use when we are asked to do things, maybe linked to guilt, expectations we have of ourselves, programming that we've had in terms of always putting others first. But actually, if we say yes when we want to say no, it will have a significant impact on our overall balance, our overall well-being. Often we'll take on too much, want to help others, don't feel comfortable saying no. But if we reframe it as a proactive action for our well-being, because apart from anything else, if we say yes and we're available for somebody else, but we're not in a good place, we're not resourced, we're actually not going to show up as our best version anyway. So, consider when actually we should say no. Perhaps you're feeling overloaded. Perhaps you're only saying yes because you feel obligated. Perhaps it crosses personal boundaries and values, or you're only saying yes to please others. So consider, how we say no, the words, the tone, the body language. That really makes a difference. I'm not suggesting we're sort of confrontational and just denial. It's about how we say no. Sadly, I have something else on. I'm afraid I can't at the moment. Or, could we catch up another time? I've got a deadline to work on. But so just try to make a more informed decision. So it's not about always saying no. It's about not checking in that your default isn't always yes. Take time to make an informed decision, have more information, and be assertive but respectful if you decide actually putting a boundary in place saying no. is the best outcome. So let's also think about technology, and does this help or hinder your work-life balance? And it probably actually does a bit of both. Our life is undoubtedly made easier, and I mean our whole life, work and all aspects of outside work, is undoubtedly made much easier by technology and wider labour-saving devices. We don't spend a fraction of the time that previous generations have had to on daily tasks, on routine admin. But we have created a world where certain types of technology feels like it kind of overwhelms and can rule our world. So think about your phone and your relationship with that. It's kind of a strange description, but actually it feels the right one, because of how attached we tend to be to some of that technology. And I would include social media as part of that. So the benefits of, to use the phone as an example, it's effectively a life management system, isn't it? You can have your diary on it, you can have your banking on it, you can pay, you can email, all of it can be on that. It keeps us connected to other people in a way that is helpful, and it gives us instant access to infinite information. But there are also a lot of drawbacks, and if we are finding that our phone is causing us challenges, again, be kind to yourself, because there is an awful amount invested by the tech companies in making their technology addictive. We are fighting against quite a lot of resource when we are finding we're picking our phone up every few minutes. We know the drawback, that fear of missing out, the fact we can lose time, endless time on scrolling. Nobody really ever picks their phone up and just does one thing. Can experience anxiety if it isn't nearby, that constant need to check. So all of those, that they are causing stress, but they're also taking away time from things where we could be focused on something. So if you're checking something when you're supposed to be doing something else, you're not fully present, and that has a real impact on overall well-being. And if we're looking about it in terms of the balance between the different areas of our lives, are you checking your emails on your phone in the evening out of working hours? So you might be physically present in your family life, but your mind has gone back to an email that you've just received. So that then the balance is getting put askew in an unhelpful way. But other times, being connected, if you're at work and you're worrying about something and somebody can connect with you and tell you, update you, actually that can be helpful. So just think about how you feel about your phone. And I think a test of it is to sort of go out without it, or put it somewhere else and actually see how you feel, see what it makes you feel. But look at where you can create better habits. Leave your phone in another room. If you're working, you don't actually actively need it, put it in another room. If you need to answer it, you just make sure it's on loud, but it will stop you just picking it up all the time. Silence notifications on it. Use the do not disturb function. Put apps in folders. Delete apps you don't need. Allocate specific times to phone use. And it will be quite challenging if we've got into that unhelpful habit of picking it up all the time. So do it gently, break the habit. Avoid checking your phone first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Quite often you hear people say, first half hour, last half hour. I would make it longer than that in the evening, certainly. But, don't check your phone. Proactively put it away when you're with other people, so you're fully present. Focus on that joy of being present rather than the fear of missing out. Be more intentional in the use. Don't wear it, go out without it. Some of you, I reckon for names that know, I've done other sessions I've done. And, when I go out for a walk at lunchtime, I very deliberately leave my phone behind, because I find the level of recharge and refresh through that total disconnect for 20 minutes, half an hour is so much stronger than if I've got my phone in my pocket. Even if it doesn't ring, even if I'm not looking at it, just knowing I can be contactable gets in the way of me being totally present. And the reality of there being a real drama in that 20 minutes is really not statistically very high. So it is absolutely worth getting used to being out without your phone. And I'm not detracting from when there is very real need to be contactable and where that gives benefits, but just think about, is there things that you could do differently? in relation to your wider technology use. And then if we think about work-life balance, I think there's the team element within this as well, or even the wider organizational element on that. How can you work collectively to support and enable individual work-life balance? And when I'm talking about that, it's about accountability. It's about agreeing sort of rules, for want of a better word. So perhaps, having an agreement that there won't be any meetings put in the diary between 1 and 2, or allowing gaps at certain times during the day, or something that you as a team will agree to and commit to, show the respect to your colleagues and for them to you in terms of those boundaries around how you work. You can also create accountability in relation to that as well. You can check in with each other in a supportive way, that you are actually taking the time out, that you are separating things out. And if somebody's got something big going on in one area of their world, then we can support them in allowing some different level of balance of flexibility, within reason and things, obviously, but in terms of a principle, how we can support each other. And not judging people when we can see things that have just got a bit out of kilter for some reason, for a short length of time. So look at how collectively as a team you might help each other create balances that work better. And then back to what's happening inside that can be causing problems in terms of you getting the balance right. That linking to Kate's comment, but you feel guilty in both camps, and I think that's often the case. We set such high expectations of ourselves. We spend all our lives juggling all these balls, but actually we feel we're never actually doing any of them as well as we'd like to. Whereas if we can look at how we can appreciate and be present and recognize we're doing the best that we can in all of those areas, and what would it look like? How would you know when you were doing your best in both camps? And I suggest that we'd probably think we were never going to get there, but we're beating ourselves up from not having reached it. So, check that in a narrative. Is it being unhelpful to you? Is it constantly striving and driving you to do more and more in all areas in a way that's not achievable? We only have that finite amount of time. So, how are we using it in a way that is beneficial for our well-being, as well as getting the things done that we need to, and including time for the things that we want to do? Check in on those beliefs, those limiting beliefs, the other thoughts and beliefs that are going through our head, usually those ones that should include should and must around the narrative. Could you be kinder to yourself? Those of you that know me know this is going to come in somewhere in relation to self-compassion, the importance of self-compassion. And research shows if we are kinder to ourselves, our overall performance and well-being are significantly improved. So are you talking to yourself and supporting yourself in a way that you would somebody you cared about? Are you acting as a friend to yourself or a coach, rather than giving yourself a constant critique and judgment about all the things you're judging yourself not doing? So noticing that, because some of it is actually about that acceptance that we are doing the best that we can in all the areas of our life. It's also important to think about our wider well-being, because it will all fit in together. If we're not looking after all the different areas of our lives, then whatever our balance is, we're still not going to feel great. So, sleep was listed by a couple of people as something they notice when the balance isn't right. But, how do you prioritize not just sufficient sleep, but actually getting good quality sleep? Looking at your diet, looking at the amount of exercise you have. They're all ways that are important that we think about within that. And then the breathing bit, I've included this because I think it's really useful just sometimes to stop and recalibrate. So when we are so busy trying to keep all these things balanced, keep all the balls in the air, getting things right, we can get caught in that. And sometimes taking a few moments of slow, deep breathing, just 3 or 4 cycles I find a really useful go-to tool when I'm trying to keep everything under control, when I'm notice that I'm telling myself I'm not doing this, that, and other, and I can feel this coming in from one side and that from another, that actually just a few cycles of slow, deep breathing in and out through your nose, down to your stomach, just sort of take it down a ratchet or two on those stress levels. So just use that as a technique, just to recalibrate. So it's reflect back on what you are going to stop doing because it's negatively affecting your balance. Start doing because it supports a better life balance, and continue doing because you realize the benefits. I think it's also really useful to actually have that slightly better clarity of what does it mean to you? You know, how will you know when you've got there? What doesn't feel right at the moment? So do a bit of a stock take as to where you are at the moment, or whether you're striving for something that actually you wouldn't really know when you got there. It doesn't actually exist as a tangible goal, but it's just that general sense of well-being. So give some thought to that as well. And when you're looking at your actions, something weird's happened to that slide, you know, what are the specific actions you're going to take? Are they realistic and achievable for you? You know, make sure anything that you're putting into your plan, you're going to enjoy doing as far as possible, that it is realistic and practical. So some just general reminders to help you. What are your barriers to making changes? How might I manage my time differently? Where might I set better boundaries? Where should I say no rather than a default yes? Where can I improve my relationship with technology? How can we achieve a better balance as a team? How are my thoughts getting in the way of the balance I want? And how can I look after my well-being better to help me be resourced to be in the best place that I can? So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I'll put the slides down in a second and have a chat and see what thoughts people have got. Just a reminder that wider work that I do is around Unleashing You, which is our evidence-based program for both personal and organisational performance, engagement and wellbeing based on positive psychology. I do a lot of wider mental health training, mental health first aid, and a lot of sessions around sort of self-care and resilience. So if anybody's interested in that, please just get in touch afterwards. So let me put the slides down. Oh, quite a lot more people came in the room when I was busy talking. That's good. So any thoughts, any actions people want to say, please come on camera if you're happy to. It's just nice to see who we're talking to. Any questions or any actions people think they're going to commit to doing? Just see if anything goes into the chat, or please just come off mic and talk if there's anything.
Lots of things to reset the mind, I think, Marion. Lots of food for thought there.
I can say I'm quite happy if actually it's a thinking silence. Hopefully I've given people lots of food for thought, but and I would encourage you to, you know, to reflect and actually put some specific actions in place. Obviously attending, this was the first step, but it's only time well invested if you go away with specific changes you can make, or even if it's just encouraged you to think differently about what we mean by work-life balance and how we know if we get there. But yeah, get into a rut and always stop and think. Yes, I do think it's that, how do we know when we've got there? Because we talk about work-life balance as this perfect place, but it's not that straightforward. Other thoughts?
Do you ever get there, or?
It depends because I think, you know, is it that sense that we've got there when we've got everything done in all areas of our lives, which is totally unrealistic. So I think, for me, it's just when I feel one area isn't overwhelming my other areas, and my just general sense of energy is positive. I think that, when it feels under control, that feels better. Yeah. But going back to the basics. Yeah. So thank you. Excellent. Good. Well, thank you. I shall pass back to Joe.
Thanks very much, Marion. So yeah, as we've said, lots of things there, food for thoughts for you to go away and mull over in your minds. I'll send out some correspondence this afternoon to everyone that's signed up for the event, and I put a comment on LinkedIn. So if you'd like a copy of the slides and the recording, then please put a comment against the LinkedIn post. Our next event is next Tuesday, the 14th of May at 12:30, and it's called Encouraging Psychological Safety, Leading by Example. A link to sign up for that will be included in the email. If anyone's recruiting, we've also got accountancy recruit, FD recruit, and exec recruit within the group. Otherwise, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Marion for your time and effort in putting the event together, and to everybody for turning up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.